What's going on, everybody? It's Justin Gazaba, and this is Living and Moving to Seattle, Washington, and it is about December 20th when I'm putting this together. And in this video, we're going to talk about 10 things you need to know about living in Seattle, Washington in the wintertime. Now, guys, I'm just going to kick it off here. December snow, I mean, we've got some slushy roads. And I saw a bus was stuck earlier going up a hill, a ventriculated bus. If you're coming from the Midwest, you might make fun of us, but our snow is typically heavier, wetter, and more like concrete, wet concrete, than that nice snow that people drive on and feel like they know what they're doing. It really, really is quite a mess here, full of just full of moisture. And out walking the dog. Thought I'd put this video together. So we're gonna go over 10 things that you need to know about living here in the wintertime, and let's get into it right now. All right, so we're back inside. So before we jump into the list, like, subscribe if you find this valuable, if you like the content, if you dig the video. Really super appreciate that. Leave me a comment down below if you've lived in the area, visited in the area, especially if it's been in the wintertime. We want to hear from you. And as always, we're helping people make this move all the time. So reach out, shoot me a text, give me a call. Let's connect. We can brainstorm some ideas, help you make that relocation if you're moving from out of state, really, really easy. Or if you're in the state and you're checking us out, really appreciate that too, but we can make that move really easy on you. So let's just jump straight into the content here, because I want to give you the 10 things that you got to know really about what it is to live in Seattle here in the wintertime, right? So just as a preface, right, we talk a lot about the rain here in Seattle, but the fact of the matter is that it does not rain as much as it does in other places, but it does linger. We do get that kind of what they refer to as the long gray, which is October 31st all the way through July 5th is the running joke. Now, it's a beautiful blue sky day. I'm filming here the shortest day of the year. It's December 20th. We just had snowfall. You saw I was out walking the dog, and that inspired me to make this video, right? Because normally we'll get snow in February. We'll get some dustings, maybe November. We might get something that comes through an inch, half an inch, and because it's so warm and temperate here, it'll warm up, melt, won't stay. Now we're in December. Now we're getting into some there's a weather pattern coming in. The East Coast is getting hit hard. Obviously we're on the West Coast, but we've got some Arctic air coming down. It is cold outside and it is icy outside, and all the side streets are frozen solid, right? Seattle's got snow plows. We made the mistake years ago of getting rid of some snow plows, and then we got dumped on, we got nailed, and really shut down the city. Now, time and again, there have been some big storms that roll through, but traditionally, those storms are usually right between Valentine's Day and President's Day in February. But if you're moving out this way or visiting in the winter, there really are 10 things that you have got to know. So let's jump into that list. We've talked a little bit about weather. We've talked a little bit about how things move and shake. It's a beautiful blue sky day, even though we've got snow on the ground still, ice on the ground still. And really what that is, I've heard people say this and be confused by it, but growing up here in the Northwest, it only made sense to me to dress in layers, bring warm layers. Even if I go out to a friend's house, I don't trust the weather, and I just don't trust the weather report. We've come a long way in meteorology and getting people to get the right details and information with the pinpoint weather and all that stuff, but I bring a warm jacket, I bring a rain jacket. Sometimes if I know there's weather coming or something gonna happen, I'll bring my extra tufts, I'll bring my boots, I'll bring rain pants. This isn't August. We're talking about winter, living here in the winter. Don't get caught without a rain jacket. That's the moral of the story. Have something, people will have gloves and hats and stuff in their car and an extra jacket in their car. and you know, you can feel like you're fumbling about as you're going out. Maybe you're going out to nightclubs and stuff, but you know, with those down jackets, if you're going out to eat, you know, a good friend of mine in college, she taught me that with those, you know, puffy rain jackets, if you're wearing the, you know, a nice puffy rain jacket, they compact down real small. And you just put it in your purse, no big deal. All of a sudden you have this big puffy warm jacket on, and now you're still dressed for the restaurant. So here's the thing, is it's a temperate climate. You're gonna wanna bring layers, because in Seattle, the temperature is much chillier than you think it ought to be. It just feels colder here, even, you know, when it's in the 30s. We don't dip below freezing that often, but today we're in the high 20s, right? So just bring layers. Number 2 on the list, okay, is we just talked about bringing layers. I should have been, you know, I just started going. I had everything I wanted to talk about, and I kind of mashed some of those together. So number 2 on the list is just prepare for multiple types of weather during the day, okay? So like I talked about with, you know, you could leave the house in its blue sky, and then you could go into the office and you could come out to rain, right? No, so bring a rain jacket. People here that live here, you know, even, you know, if we look at the Oregon Territory before Washington was split off as a state, you know, even way back, people had talked about, I've seen these reels, these old books, you know, about how people out here just don't use umbrellas, right? It's a rain jacket, it's rain boots, you know, just be prepared for that. So although the, you know, rain is common, you know, we also get sleet. We get that what we call an Oregon mist, when it mist Oregon and it's raining here. It's a bad dad joke, but it's true. It just kind of lingers. You'll get sideways rain, right? So you just want to be prepared for that type of weather. So like we talked about with weather and snow and different conditions, and we talked about, you know, dressing in layers and being prepared with your, you know, rain jackets, a good decent jacket. You don't got to suit up in your Grundians like you're going out fishing in Alaska, but you do want to have, you know, a decent pair of rain pants, you know, especially if you got dogs or whatever. When I go walk the dog, especially in the wintertime, I don't mess around. I just put on my rain pants and go, unless it's just crystal clear, you know, amazing in the winter, which is, we do get a handful of those days. It's day by day, right? So rain can really happen at any time, and you know, you could have early morning showers, late night drizzles, or even you know, all day downpours. One time it rained for 47 days straight and didn't stop raining. So you want to be prepared for that. Number 4 on the list is the daylight hours. Now, it's the shortest day of the year that I'm filming this right now, and I think we're going to have about 8 hours of daylight total. I have to double check and look that up. I'm not going to do it right now, but it gets darker and darker, and the days get shorter and shorter. You know, the further you go north, right? That's how that works, you know. And Seattle being pretty far north, the daylight hours get really, really short. We're getting sunrises after 7:30 or after 8 o'clock, something like that, and it gets dark around 4:30. So you can go to and from work in the dark. You never see the daylight, so you got to be prepared for that. It's kind of like that long gray, the you know, the weather that sticks around here, and just that overcast that we get. But the daylight hours getting short as well. So, you know, a lot of folks, you got to, you know, take your vitamin C, get your daily exercise, get your fresh air fix, get out there, because it can really impact people's mood if you're not used to it. It's very, very easy to be, you know, if you're inclined to it, it can be very, very easy to become kind of a homebody, you know, English tea, drink your tea, hang out at the house. And there's no problem, right? But if you're the kind of person that too much of that gets you restless, just build into your routine. Know that it's going to get dark. Know that you're going to have short daylight hours. Know that you're going to have limited time. It might make sense to take a walk at lunch and get some of that natural vitamin D and fresh air if you can. Okay, so in the Seattle metro area in November, this water, sewer, trash, the garbage, they allow you extra pickups of leaves and debris, because they want to keep the storm drains clear. And the reason I bring that up is that when we do have big rainfall, when we do have a snow event, there is concern about flooding. Now, typically, it's just in the streets, mild, nothing, not up to your doors, right? None of this crazy flooding that is dangerous to drive through. There might be things in those big puddles that aren't good for your car. So whenever we have weather events, I'm of the mind, hey, it can wait. There's nothing so important, especially with work from home, and it's okay. It's going to be fine. But just know that if some of our rivers are known to flood. I think the Skokomish River, Skagit. There's some of these rivers, as you get out in the further away into more rural communities. We did have one river flood, and then we had a big landslide years ago. Devastating landslide. Super unfortunate. But those kinds of things can happen when we have large weather events, and you just got to be aware of it. And I'm making it sound like, the winter's cold and dark and, freezing temperatures and tough to get around. And you just got to be aware. And that's why, the first thing on the list, really just want to have a, solid rain jacket, good equipment. They say that one of my favorite, got my hat on. I got one of my favorite hats is from a shop up in Bellingham that specializes in outdoor gear. And they used to run this commercial that said there's no such thing as bad weather, just insufficient gear. And I think that makes so much sense here in the Northwest, because you really want to be prepared. And we're not talking about like emergency preparedness. We're just talking about common sense prepared. Rain jacket, rain boots, that sort of thing. So even during the harsh winter months and the snow, gosh, one of the reasons I wanted to make this video is because from my office, I can look out the window there, and I can see one of the bus routes, and I saw a ventriculated bus. I think that's what they're called, ventriculated buses, and they have the accordion in them. And not necessarily, my understanding, you could Google this, correct me if I'm wrong, but they're not supposed to operate in the snow. And Seattle sometimes runs them anyway. You could look up, you could look up some nasty storms in Seattle, and I've even seen these buses. I don't want to scare you, but I've seen these buses hanging over overpasses because they slid on the ice. It's funny that I mentioned all that because I was going to talk about how good the transit is and how they work to operate. They have certain snow routes, all that stuff's available. You can still get around and stay out of, it's a fairly, there are some fairly walkable portions of Seattle that make it really convenient and easy to get around. But the transit, they have snow routes, and so your main arterials, your main areas, and we have all the snow plows too. I think we're up to 30 snow plows now for the city of Seattle, which is a tremendous amount. I think at one point we had 6 or 7, and it was a disaster when we had a snow event. So, but you'll still be able to get around. You might have to walk a little further to get to the bus, but you'll still be able to stay dry and stay on those buses, and they're very well supported. It's a very rare instance where a bus, hey, they should have chained up and they didn't, easy, pulled off to the side of the road. A new bus came, everybody got on the new bus, stuff happens. So, but there is still really great transit even on the snow routes. Okay, so let's talk about driving in wintry conditions. If you come from the Midwest and you're used to driving in snow, our snow is different. It's wetter. There's a higher moisture content. That's what we've been told. That's my understanding. It is like driving in cement. It is not wet cement. It is not the nice crunchy stuff that it's slushy, it's wet, it's slidey. So there's a lot of folks out here who, we got Stevens, we got Snoqualmie, Crystal Mountain. There are, you can go up to Baker. There's some great places to go ski, snowboard, and snowshoe, good winter sports. There's some great hikes and stuff. So there's a lot of folks out here that moved out here for the mountains and for the nature, and their vehicles, a lot of times Subarus, that's the joke. They're the one, they got the all-wheel drive, four-wheel drive. They've got good, all-season winter tires, and those are their mountain cars, right? They don't drive them to the office. They got to buy a brand new car. and only take it into the mountains, you know. So, but that's real. That's a real thing. A lot of the times, people have their winter rig with good tires for the winter. So don't think that you're going to come out and move out this way. And maybe you've been able to get around in wintry conditions otherwise without having chains, without having snow tires. Just don't risk it. The mountain passes, you know, we see those get shut down all the time because people take a risk. They think they're going to be fine, and they certainly are not. Even here in the wintertime, you know, you don't necessarily need to have studded tires, but Seattle is just hills. Everything comes up from the Puget Sound up to Queen Anne, then back down into Lake Union, then back up into Capitol Hill, and then north up into Ballard and Crown Hill. It goes up the hill, and everything is just hills. So it's just really, really hilly. And when the snow comes and the ice comes, you know, there's a lot of distressed vehicles get parked on the side of the roads. Well, you can look up all these, you know, the annual events. You know, people make fun of it. We have a great satire fake news publication here in Seattle called The Needling, and very fun to check them out. I don't know if they have a Facebook, but they definitely have an Instagram. A little shout out to them because they just post so much great ironic content about the Seattle area. But because Queen Anne Hill, you know, there's like an annual sledding event, see the cars get nailed. People will gather just to watch the traffic and watch the people, you know, get in car accidents. I mean, it's like a sporting event to see that happen. Okay, so the Queen, I looked it up, just took a break really quick. The Queen Anne Snow Slam. I mean, this is people just like driving here, right? So the Marqueen, oh my gosh, these guys are so funny, but it really is like an event here to watch people try to drive through Queen Anne, through downtown, down these hills, even in Capitol Hill, and the Needling, you know, the Queen Anne Snow Slam. I mean, this is just truly genius of them to put together, but it really does, you know, shed light on what we see throughout the wintertime when people come here and they move here and they're unprepared. And just the driving conditions are different. It's not what people expect from the Midwest, and I just caution everybody, you know, don't feel like because you have four-wheel drive, you know what you're doing. That's the most cars that we see in ditches and parked on the side of the road are four-wheel drive cars because people think that they can handle it. But the conditions are just different. There's so many hills and turns, and the list goes on. So when you make the move out here, you know, just be sure that you take risks accordingly, right? Be prepared. Get those winter tires. You know, have a vehicle. My vehicle, I know it's garbage in the snow, so I don't drive it. It's just not that great. I got one of those hybrid Ford Escapes. It's got the battery for the EV stuff in the back of the car, so it puts a lot of weight on the rear tires, but it's front wheel drive, and it's got an aluminum 4-cylinder block, so it's not very heavy, so it kind of disproportionately pulls the front tires up off the ground just because of the balance of it. It's my personal opinion, my driving experience, and so it just doesn't have the right kind of traction that you would want out of your steering and out of your front tires to pull you along in the snow. So can I drive in the snow? Yeah, you bet. Do I risk it? No, it's not worth it, right? But all the main arterials I'm looking out right now, and it's, you know, it's clear and easy peasy. It's just the side streets that get really icy and don't get plowed. So another thing to think about with everybody's got a phone, right? Or I don't know where my phone is. Everybody's got a phone with a flashlight, but in these short winter months, it does, you know, especially if you're walking the dog or you're going to a friend's house or you're getting along. If you get into some of the side streets in the neighborhoods, there's decent street lamps most places, but it is helpful to have a flashlight on you. It's good kind of winter emergency preparedness to have a flashlight in the car. So just think about having that. A lot of my friends, we've got headlamps. It's helpful to have those headlamps as you go out, you know, because we're hiking and doing that stuff, doing alpine starts and that sort of thing. So you just want to make sure you have a good light source with you in the winter. You know, it's funny, this, you know, when moving to Seattle, right, this video is turning out to be more of a winter preparedness video, but I think you got to be prepared for what it's like to live here with all the hills. You know, notoriously, even in the 1800s, I wish I could remember the book, but in the 1800s, you know, there's a German that had moved to the Oregon Territory, and he was writing home about, you know, Portlanders and how different it is and how they don't use umbrellas and how drivers from California aren't very good, right? So even in the 1800s, these things, I guess they're stereotypes, still exist today. We just see a lot of poor driving, you know, people that aren't using umbrellas and just aren't prepared for what it's like to live here in Seattle. So I want to give you the rundown. Okay, so I think this is the last one on the list. I didn't do a very good job of keeping count, but I think we're at 10. So in the wintertime, Seattle, I've talked about in other videos, Seattle's full of old houses and brand new houses, not a lot in between. Now, when you get out into, you know, Bellevue, Kirkland, you go a little bit further out, Redmond, you get down into Kent and in Auburn, right? The further you get away from the Seattle downtown core, the newer the houses get. It's like rings on a tree. You can almost decade by decade, you can kind of see, you know, you can start downtown, you can start in Tacoma as well, start in Tacoma and get further out, right? And so you get in, you know, the 1800s, 1900s, 1920s, 30s, 40s, you know, as you spread out, right? So when I think about Seattle, and we can talk more about that if you want to, but when I think about Seattle, I think about, like, we have old houses, old craftsmen, a lot of, you know, Victorians, Dutch colonials, craftsmen, Tudors, right? And then we have new townhouses. Starting somewhere in the, you know, late 90s or whatever, you start to see townhouses come in, but not a lot of 60s, 70s, 50s, 60s, 70s, or 80s built homes. There are some, but it's just neighborhood by neighborhood. It's not that. So one of the things to think about when you make a move up here is, you know, whenever somebody moves into a house, I've got a guide that I give people about the easiest way to make the most improvements to their home, right? So what to do first, where you get the most bang for your buck, and this sort of thing. And it really, you know, especially with old homes, you always start in the attic with insulation. You always, you know, do your furnace after that, and then windows. Windows are the most expensive, and they give you the least bang for your buck on efficiency, right? You lose the most of your heat, but you lose most of your heat through your ceiling and through your roof, so insulation is the cheapest and the biggest bang for your buck. And then you get a more efficient furnace, maybe get a heat pump and AC when you do that, and then because you've got a nice, you know, nicely insulated attic, your furnace is not gonna have to work as hard, and it's gonna have the most efficiency. And then the last thing you do, which is the most expensive thing, is the windows. And the reason I bring this up is because everybody wants to do the windows first, because they see the windows. You look at them every day. In the wintertime, they're gonna sweat, you know, especially if you have anodized aluminum or aluminum windows, or, you know, even some of the old houses, you've got single pane windows, or you've got the old, you know, wooden windows. And so people want to replace those first. They spend the most amount of money, but it's not the most cost benefit for their efficiency. Now, obviously in the wintertime, if you're in an old drafty house, you're going to want to bring attention to that first, right? So you can kind of, you know, in college, I lived in an old house in college up in Bellingham, and I got blue painter's tape, and I went around the windows with some Visqueen, some plastic painter's tape, painter's tape and a painter's tarp, the plastic tarp, to kind of add another layer to the window. And then you could actually see that they were so drafty that the air was coming in, and the plastic wrap puffed into the house. That's how drafty those windows were. Now, we were renting that house. It wasn't my house. I would still follow the same advice because insulation is so cheap, right? Heat pump is the next expensive, and then windows are the most expensive to be able to get new vinyl windows put in, because typically you got all the siding work you got to do, and you've got to frame them in and do all this trim work and everything else. It gets to be expensive. But check your doors and your windows for leakage when you move up here in the wintertime, especially if you're in an old home. You can use that painter's tape trick just to see how much air you've got coming through your windows. And then they do make those little door stops that help with drafts around your doors in case you are getting a heavy draft. You know, you want to get your home sealed up decent so that you're not wasting a ton of energy on heat. So if you've lived your life at all in a semi-temperate or a warmer climate, moving to Seattle in the wintertime really could be a shock to the system. Lower temperatures, lower daylight hours, more rain. The weather here in the wintertime really can be a lot to take in. So in this video, we covered dressing in layers, different kinds of rain that we get, how the daylight hours are shorter, how winter temperatures can be extreme, how the rain can cause flooding, Seattle's transit is still good even when it snows, investing in winter tires, and trusting and knowing your own ability to drive in the snow, and maybe just not going if you can afford to stay home. We talked about the Queen Anne Slam and how people gather to watch people try to drive in the snow and get car accidents. We talked about having a light source in your car, and we talked about window leakage and checking your home and making sure your house is in good working order. Guys, that's 11 things. I know, 11 things to help you when you want to make a move here in the winter time. Reach out to me, give me a call. If you live here, like I said, give us a comment below. Is there something I forgot about living here in the winter time? Really appreciate you guys taking the time to watch the video, and we'll see you in the next one. All right, talk to you.